I think I'm going to yawn. Hold on.
I'm going to have to yawn as well, because that's what happens, isn't it?
Yeah, it might be.
I think it passed.
How do you stop yawning? Do you need
surgery of some sort?
a surgery?
I think they have good surgeons in Tokyo that take away your yawning
abilities?
Yeah. So I've been looking a lot into leading as an introvert. So not just in terms of as a creative director potentially in the future. I mean, that's something that I want to be eventually. But also I read certain books like Quiet is a really good book about, I think it has the tagline of the power of introverts in a world that can't stop talking. And so I'm kind of at a stage in my career where I want to be sort of pushing into leadership and sort of supporting people and progressing in that way. So it's not just as a creative, but as an introvert. And I know that we've talked before, and you sort of defined yourself as an introvert as well, and you're obviously in a leadership position. And I kind of wanted to just sort of talk to you about it and sort of your experience and your sort of journey and things that you've learned, and that could not just help me. I don't want to be like selfish about it and just have it all for personal gain, but also for other people out there that are watching.
Okay, so talk to me about those aspirations then, and what you want to be, and then the worries that might come along with that.
I think aspiration-wise, it's kind of, it's not so much that I lose ambition in career. So I keep progressing in terms of what I'm learning technically, in terms of designing, whether it's motion design, 3D. But eventually I get these moments where I think, is that really all I want to do? You know, can it go further? And I kind of, not in an arrogant sense, but I get like good feedback from people and people that say I'm sort of well regarded or held.
You're dedicated at what you want to do. You found your passion, you love it, you're learning at it. Yeah, okay.
But it's just kind of being able to, I guess, leverage that and help other people as well, get the most out of the people around me, and kind of, I don't know, make cool stuff at Strategiq and kind of be heading that.
So is it a case of you see yourself in the future leading a design team, or leading a team that might be specialists in animation, and you want to know what it would take to become that? Yeah,
basically, yeah. You know, I don't have like a junior motion designer with me, but when I'm collaborating across the team, especially with people like the developers who are, I think, it's not so much stereotypically they're more introverted, it's a few of them are, and I get along with them really well, and we seem to work together and have, you know, similar interests in terms of pushing the boat out in terms of R&D and exciting projects. Yeah, I can't actually remember what your question was.
What worries have you got?
Worries?
What's worrying you about becoming that leader? What do you think is holding you back?
I feel it's not so much. I feel like most leaders are, it may just be a cliche, but I feel like most leaders, or the people that people look up to or agree with and go along with, are the more extroverted people, the people that are more you know, assured about the decisions they're making. I'm not like throwing people under the bus here, but sometimes people will be very decisive, and it might not be the best decision, but they've thought of it, they're convicted to it, and people will follow that. Personally, I feel I'm more thoughtful, and I'll mull things over more, maybe to the point of overthinking, but I know sometimes there's times where things don't go right, and I think I should have trusted my gut and said something then. I should have got in early. And sort of worries about either just being listened to. Sometimes even in normal conversations, I'm not like playing the victim, but sometimes people will interrupt or talk over, and I find it difficult to then kind of get people back, or to kind of maybe not be listened to, but feel listened to, I suppose. And even in general communication, sometimes I struggle to kind of don't know what the word is, like get my point across, to be really articulate, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that's a really big point in understanding strengths of people who are generally and most likely introverted, because one of the strengths of that introvert is that listening, but not just listening, but understanding as well. So I'm in a leadership team, and I hope people don't mind me saying that I think is very heavily extrovert. And in order to get your point across, you have to be a little bit more calculated in the time and the point in which you put your point across. But what I can do is listen and take everything in. And that's a real strength, because I learn from a lot of what other people are saying. That, I think, is clear in the output of mine and our work in creative. So sometimes leading isn't always about being the loudest. Sometimes leading is being able to truly understand what people want to get out of a particular situation. And everyone around you could be really loud, talking over each other, trying to get their point across, when ultimately, as a creative director, my job is to make sure that the output meets the brief, right? Mm-hmm. Creatively, and what other values we stand for. And other people can do that job for you. They can give you what they need, the information they need, and sometimes it's not always about having that opinion. It's good to be seen and to be heard, but I think to have value in what you're saying, through the fact that you've listened to what everybody else has said, I think you can quite easily have a mic drop if you want at the end of it, because you've listened and you've understood. So I relate totally to what you're saying, and there are still occasions where I will sit in a room and be drowned out, or feel like I'm being drowned out. But what I can do is listen and take that away. And the advantage of a lot of our work is that people aren't looking for that solution straight away. Some people will try and find it. You'll sit in, we've sat in creative meetings behind us on the sofas, and a lot of that brainstorming session, people are trying to find the solution there and then, and that's not necessarily what they're about. And everything that everyone says in that meeting is a tool, and you shouldn't necessarily feel like you have to have an answer there and then.
No, that's really good. Actually, thinking about that, taking the time to listen to people, especially like hearing that we both have that feeling of sometimes being like drowned out. Yeah. I think it gives some sort of empathy almost to maybe other quieter people who might have that same feeling, where we might need to take more time to listen to them as well. It's a bit of a cliche of like treat people how you'd like to be treated, but it kind of works in a way. I feel that way with, again, going back to some of the developers or Daisy. I don't know if it's strange to name people on here that might not appear, but taking that time to like listen to them and get their point across.
And I think that's a point as a leader as well, is that if you're always looking for the solution without your team always feeling like you need to be the answer, then you're missing a trick, because you've got a team of people around you, however loud or quiet they are, that can help you create something that it surpasses what you would be able to do yourself. So like you say, sitting down with another designer, talking about things and maybe identifying that they didn't get much time to speak in a meeting, and talking to them about their thoughts on that, even if it's just a quick, passing question, they might have that great insight into something else that you didn't know was there. So that's part of leadership. You know, you're already thinking that way, and sometimes observing is a really good way of being able to identify the next steps.
Yeah, I guess. Do you have any ways? I know you kind of said about talking to them afterwards, but say if we were doing a collaborative session, like a brainstorming session, some kind of ideation thing, and someone who's a bit quieter isn't perhaps, you know, they're not saying anything or saying very little, and it's not that I would think, oh, they don't have any ideas or they're not interested. It might be that they just don't feel like they can get a word in edgeways or aren't that confident. Are there ways that you'd engage them or encourage them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's part of the job of the person leading a meeting or a discussion or a creative session, is to make sure that everybody has had a voice. And it might be quite easy to get sucked into conversations from some of the more opinionated or extrovert, naturally extrovert people. They will always have, everyone has ideas, and if there's some people sitting in that meeting that aren't being vocal or don't feel like they can be, then engaging them, there'll be some really good points that the discussions are coming up. So let's use names. Ian, great point. Daisy, have you got any thoughts on that? Would just be a really simple way of starting to get people involved, and then you have to play off that as well. So there might be a feeling that person doesn't necessarily want to come up, voice ideas in that meeting. So you've got to be able to help and make people feel comfortable. There's lots of things that you've got to be observing and being able to control if you're leading a meeting. And I think it's not necessarily down to that introvert to get their voice in. If that person leading it has got any sort of leadership skills, they'll be identifying that some people are being quiet, and they'll bring them into the discussion. Yeah. Having said that, from experience, if you've finished a meeting and you haven't had a chance to get your voice across, there shouldn't be a sense of I didn't get my voice in that meeting, and I don't think I'm going to be heard, or never mind, I'll get a word in next time. Pull some people to one side, send them an email if that's what you need to do to get your voice heard. But it shouldn't stop a naturally introverted person from getting their points across or getting their opinions across. There's plenty other ways that person could do that.
Yeah, I suppose that kind of think back to what we were talking earlier as well. It can kind of lead into some of the kind of like, not necessarily weaknesses, but kind of things you might not, your sort of shortcomings in a way. That's just another word for weaknesses, really. But it can be kind of overly sensitive, or sometimes, not saying sensitivity is a bad thing, but it can kind of hold, at least in my experience, it can kind of hold me back, whether I'm thinking about sharing an idea that I'm a bit cautious about, or thinking, these people are going to tear me apart if it's not any good. Yeah. Or sort of, that kind of goes into overthinking and worrying as well. I suppose with leadership, you want to be creating an environment that kind of, mitigates, is that the word? Or it goes against that, kind of relaxes people. And so even when we talk about taking the time to listen to people, sometimes that just means like giving them time to think before they talk. I try and do that sometimes consciously when I'm talking. I don't try and just splurge something out that ends up not really making sense because I haven't had the time to think about my response. Yeah. As an introvert, I usually want to think first rather than just being put on the spot, where it then goes kind of panic stations and I don't know what to do, and I come out with some complete garbage.
But I think there's another angle, which is that as much as someone who's more naturally introverted won't want to speak their mind or the first thing that comes in their head, or get worried because their idea might be laughed at, for example, is there's still that bite the bullet and do it anyway, and I've had to do that a lot, I would say. You know, there's still, I watch, you know, you watch videos on TikTok about being more ambitious and reaching your goals and things like that. And if you're in your comfort zone all the time, you're naturally introvert. You've got your headphones on. You're just working, and you feel good about it. You're fine. That's probably, and this won't go for everyone, but that's probably where you're going to stay for a longer period of time. It's certainly going to take you longer to get to where you might want to be, and there is a point of having to take yourself out of that comfort zone. And there's things that I'm doing at the moment, projects I'm working on that make me feel uncomfortable for most of the day and most of the time. And there's things that I'm doing at the moment that I don't know if they're right or wrong. There's that strength and resilience, and I know we've done that training before, to be able to put on a front sometimes. You don't have to be false, but to just do it and not be afraid of what comes out the back of it. And there's little tips and tricks that you can look at and learn that might help you be better at it. But ultimately, you'll never get, I don't think anyway, you won't get around the fact that at some point you're going to have to bite the bullet and do something. As much as we can stand up there and have a creative session, I can be as mindful as I can to some people who aren't talking as much as others. You know, there's got to be a point where if that person wants to progress in their career, they're going to have to, you know, step up and be heard, and you know, there's that angle of it as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Going out your comfort zone, because I read into that a while ago, where it's like, I can't remember how they describe it exactly, but once you go out of your comfort zone, the kind of comfort zone, it keeps kind of progressing into new things, if that makes sense. So, I don't know, leadership, I don't know what else you'd be involved in, like managing a team, maybe that then stretches it, and you have to keep going to actually progress. So the bar keeps getting higher, but being an introvert doesn't mean, you know, the potential weaknesses or things that you aren't good at have to always be like that you can turn those sort of weaknesses into strengths. And
I always thought that because I was naturally introverted and I was almost scared to push the boundaries a little bit, that put me on the back foot to those that are more extroverted. Now they'll have their own challenges in it. No one's perfect. They'll have their own challenges in wanting to progress. But they will make mistakes quicker and learn quicker. So it's about pushing the boundaries as quickly as you can and getting over that. And there was that saying, I can't remember what it was. What was it? Something about do uncomfortable things to become more comfortable, something along those lines. So the more that you stretch your boundaries, the more comfortable that becomes. And then you can look to the next thing, and it will feel uncomfortable for a period of time, and then you can, you know, feel more comfortable in doing that. And you know, that's really something to be said, because there's a lot of things now that I'm doing and that I have to work on that feel a lot more comfortable than they did a year ago. And yeah, I think that's a really nice way of looking at it. And there's another one as well. I think it was hard decisions for an easy life, easy decisions for a harder life.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. Yeah. Are there any times when you might have to, so I can think of some, but where we might need to be more sort of extroverted or adopt those kind of qualities and kind of be more outgoing or energetic?
So a book, if you haven't read it already, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I think I've said it to a few people. There's plenty of times where being more extrovert and just going at your comfort. We all know that everyone's got the ability to be extrovert. You know, it takes some people a little bit more effort than others, right? But it's identifying when those occasions might be really relevant. So, for example, really easy one: come in on a Monday morning, Teams in, I walk through the door. If I walk in and put my headphones on and sit at my laptop, I'm probably not going to have the engagement I want from my team from then on. I've set the tone for the week. So I walk through the door in the morning. Hi everyone, how's your weekend been? Being a little bit more extrovert, asking some questions, getting to know people, getting to know personal life as well. It's not all about work, it's about engaging the team on a personal level. So those elements and making sure that you've set that tone, it has a massive effect for the week, and then how that person feels working for you or with you in your team. And yeah, I would say there's a lot of places to be more extrovert with clients for one, geeing yourself up and going into a meeting and being really proactive and doing your utmost not to just sit and take everything in, but try and engage in those conversations. I think that's really important as well.
Okay. Yeah, I'd say I definitely struggle to be more extroverted. That's definitely a higher effort for me. I guess at the moment it depends on who I'm with as well. There's some people that I feel more comfortable with. Mm-hmm. It's not like just being myself. I feel I'm different with a lot of different people, so I sort of change my approach. But sometimes when it's like a lot of people who are quieter and are perhaps a bit more difficult to engage, then I might feel the need to be a bit more extroverted and talk and get to know them and kind of, I don't know, it's not like I'm trying to make people open up, but it's showing that I'm not kind of aloof and always have my headphones on and keep to myself.
Yeah. And so that's quite natural, I think, anyway, for someone who's quite naturally an introvert, is to be a lot more comfortable around those who are quite similar. And what I've loved learning is that everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, right? And if you can harness those around you who are willing to put 100 ideas down on a board, 99 of them are rubbish, one of them's absolute brilliance. If we can, harness that and learn from that and use other people's skill sets to the team's advantage, the company's advantage, then you end up with a much better output, as more uncomfortable as that might feel. So we've got a really nice mix in creative, for example, from very outgoing people to others that quite like to be introvert. And if we have discussions in a creative meeting, then there's nothing wrong with allowing that, people to just spitball those ideas, because that's what's there, and then that might spark something for you, for example, and where you can then start talking or exploring the detail behind that one idea that everyone's sort of latched on to. It's about collaboration, and when people identify that they don't have to be the one that comes up with the solution all the time, just keep pulling on everyone's idea. Why does one person have to be the one that comes up with the idea? Why can't everybody come up with an idea together and be proud of it? And I think when everybody works in harmony, introverts, extroverts, whatever else we might call it, you come up with some great ideas. We've seen that. We know that in creative.
Yeah, it definitely helps to have like a lot of different, whether it's not always just simple as extroverts, introverts, it's people of different experience, different cultures.
Exactly.
It just makes, I don't know, sometimes it makes the ideas more human, I guess. They're more in touch with real people if they're actually developed by a load of people who are very different.
Yeah. So what I would say is that if we're talking and we're then going to go, okay, so what should people really focus on as introverts, and whether they want to push their career on and lead, is not to worry about being so much like other people. It's about harnessing those strengths and really understanding what those strengths can do. And I mean, I think the ability to mentor and engage with people, and like you say, that empathy side of things, I think that introverts they're very good at being able to value other people's perspectives, and I think that also links to the listening. I think the challenges that we might come across are very much around being sensitive to feedback. I think we might worry, we might overthink, but I think it's ultimately about biting the bullet and getting on with it. If you want to get to that next level, you will get better at doing that if you are going out of your way to just do it, and you're experiencing it, and you're making mistakes, and you're learning from it. And as long as you are keeping in the back of your mind the things that you are very good at, and you're harnessing those, and you're listening and creating great outputs, and you're better at taking calculated risks, for example, because you've thought about it a little bit before you've gone and spitballed, then that's absolutely fine. But there will be occasions where you've just got to get on and do it, and I think that's the kind of key takeaway.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think it was from our Strategiq day as well. There's that thing about you'll be stumbling around, but as long as you're stumbling around, you're moving somewhere, aren't you? It's something progressing by making those mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you can play to your strengths, and at the same time, it doesn't mean you should always just confine yourself to them. Like those weaknesses that you might have can be turned into strengths through making mistakes and learning from them.